the health of tropical fish like these, some of which are worth thousands of dollars, that has aquarium owners concerned about the new water treatment process. The Hunter District Water Board started adding chloramines to water at Tonago early last week as an additional purifying agent. Chloramines improve the quality of drinking water, but used directly in aquariums can kill fish. The reason is that it contains chlorine and ammonia. The normal filtration system in an aquarium copes with the ammonia, but the excess chlorine burns the gills of fish, causing suffocation. O'Malley's Aquarium at Whitebridge is a licensed quarantine station for tropical fish. Its proprietor, Bill Carnell, says the effects can be avoided.
Well, as the Hunter Water Board has said, they can aerate the water for 24 hours or put it out in the sunlight, or a far easier method is just to use a dechlorinating agent.
And how do these products work?
Immediately. As soon as you put the product in, it neutralises the chlorine immediately, which renders the water safe.
The quarantine station says all fish from the humble guppies to the more exotic species are at risk, but provided the water is treated in the recommended ways, they believe the fish will be unaffected.
I think it'll affect us in certainly rather dramatically in a number of ways, because there'd be the land use question, location, which would be very difficult to establish locations where such operations could in actual fact relate to the community. Indeed, I think it would certainly have a lot of difficulties for us.
Alderman Pasterfield says that he doesn't believe that the state government has dumped the controversial problem of brothels in council's lap.
I think that if this kind of business is operated, it probably is something that needs to be administered at a very close range.
The exercise started at 5:30 this afternoon and is expected to last well into the night. The jump out is part of a national campaign to promote the benefits of skipping as a healthy activity for the heart and circulation. It also raises money for the National Heart Foundation. Students at Dudley Public School formed into 20 groups of 6. Each group is sponsored for the number of minutes one of its members jumps rope. Participants didn't necessarily have to get it right, and they could use their own special style. But despite the strenuous activity, not a single heart skipped a beat. Today's by-election was to fill the vacancy created when Councillor Innes Crichton resigned 4 months ago. Mr Crichton resigned after clashing with Council over its Salamander Bay development. But today Mr Crichton is standing for re-election as an independent. He says because of public pressure and to give people the chance to show Council that they support him.
My opinion hasn't changed in the 2.5 years I've been involved in it. I think it was being done very badly. I think decisions have been taken, and I like the phrase used in the inspector's report, inexplicable decisions have been taken. I just can't see the chopping and changing that took place was a valid way to handle any major project.
Are you confident of re-election?
If the feeling that I have for this community is as I believe, yes, I will be elected on the first count. That's the way I...
One of the reasons Mr Crichton clashed with Council was its treatment of a development application submitted by Woolworths. The company wanted to open a supermarket in the Nelson Bay Central Business District. Council imposed a number of conditions on the development. After indicating that these would be fought in the Land and Environment Court, Woolworths yesterday withdrew, saying it no longer considered the project to be viable. Do you see this as a vote of no confidence in Nelson Bay as a commercial centre?
I don't know about a vote of no confidence. I see it as the result of council's restrictions, we'd be the only shire that I think in Australia who would actively canvass against somebody like Woolworths coming to the town. And that's what council
The Nelson Bay
decision
Chamber of
meant.
Commerce today
They imposed
supported Mr
conditions
Crichton's
which were
view, laying the blame for Woolworths pulling out squarely at the council's door.
The National Heart Foundation's campaign is aimed at everyone who thinks they may be at risk from high cholesterol levels. Too much of the substance in the body can directly contribute to heart disease, Australia's biggest killer. So what exactly is cholesterol?
Basically it's fat that's found in some dairy products and some meat products. And fat, it's broken down in the body and forms cholesterol and can build up on the arteries in the body, and it then makes the heart have to work a lot harder.
Coordinated by the Newcastle West Community Health Team, experts in the field of health and nutrition will be at the shopping centre all week. And one of Australia's popular but rather unhealthy characters is also putting in an appearance. According to Catherine Hugo, it's a week of both awareness and participation.
Well, they can come along, and some of the staff that you might be able to see behind me here are actually measuring people's blood pressures, their heights and weights, and giving them a bit of advice about if their blood pressure is a little bit high. We're not trying to get everyone to panic and go rushing off and have their cholesterol levels done, but it might be something that people can do when they do go to the doctors next, that they might be able to mention that they're a little worried, or they've heard that it is a good idea and the doctor will advise them.
To meet the players.
So far in 1986, the word change and the Falcons seem to go hand in hand. Apart from new ownership, the Falcons have 2 new coaches and 8 new players. Last night they held a Meet the Players night at the West Leagues Club for the media and for sponsors. Many Falcons management officials were there, as was Paul Sellers, son of new owner Basil Sellers. All the players were there, the 8 new faces and the 2 stayers, Ian Rebillard and Mike Johnson. Despite a record of only 1 win in 5 pre-season trial games, new coach Steve Johansen says the Falcons will do well this year.
I'm confident and the team's confident, and when we get our centre it'll be the icing on the cake for the team in that respect. But all the coaches around the country believe that it's going to be a topsy-turvy year for every team. It's going to be, I believe, the most even competition that anybody's ever seen in the National League.
You mentioned getting the centre, which is of course Jim Moran.
Hogg's seen here playing for the Newcastle District Representative side, but seen here as often captain, is a resident of Cessnock, but has captained the Stockton team for a number of years. He also played with great success for the Balmain team in Sydney and repped with the New South Wales second 11. Hogg played last season for the Australian country team against India and was named man of the match. He is a right-handed opening batsman and a right-handed medium-pace bowler. Newcastle cricket followers will delight in the choice, as he is a fine sportsman and described as a real good bloke.
Bulldozer driver Carl Bowden was moving slag fill at the Wharf Road foreshore improvement site this afternoon when he felt the earth move under his feet. In reality, what was happening was that his Caterpillar D6 was heading sideways into the draining. Carl only just had time to put it in reverse and make one effort to drive out, but to no avail. The machine continued its inexorable slide. So he came quickly to the only conclusion possible. It decided discretion to be the better part of valour and parted company with his dozer. Some might call it bailing out. Apart from a couple of waterlogged work boots and a slight dent in an otherwise faultless 25-year career at pushing the earth around, Cole was unharmed. Machines like these don't come cheaply, so Newcastle city officials were pleased to see the two hastily summoned cranes could lift the 22-tonne contraption in one heave and plonk it unceremoniously on the high and dry, just as one of the chain slings gave way. There's a good side to every story, and in this case, it's that the Works Depot planned a complete engine and transmission oil change on the beast tomorrow. So, luckily, they'll only have to do it once.
A storm is brewing on the waters of Newcastle Harbour over the donation last week of Newcastle's long-serving pilot vessels, the Giralong and the Gudaloo, to the Royal Volunteer Coastal Patrol. The vessels will be replaced over the next 2 years. Mr Laurie Brereton announced the move under the government's Waterways program last Thursday. The Giralong is to go to the Royal Volunteer Coastal Patrol in Port Stephens, where it will be used to train volunteers and cadets in rescue boat operations. It will also be used as a backup service to the police rescue boat. The Gudaloo will serve a similar purpose in Sydney. However, a challenge to the Minister's decision has come from local maritime historian and retired harbour master Captain Ken Hopper. Captain Hopper, who skippered the Giralong on its first voyage in 1959, is concerned that Newcastle Harbour will lose a valuable part of its history.
It's the last of an era of this particular type of vessel, and therefore, as time goes on, this will become very historically significant.
While the Giralong still has an active life, shouldn't the Royal Volunteer Coastal Patrol be given an opportunity to use it?
We're afraid that a vessel like this is going to cost a lot of money to maintain. It'll need major alterations to make it suitable for their purpose. And therefore, these alterations is going to make the vessel for the future unsuitable for a museum exhibit, because we want to exhibit it as the pilot vessel of this era.
Newcastle and Sydney are competing in the prestigious event, which has been running for the last 8 years. Trophies for this year's competition have been donated by the Grand Hotel at Wyong, with cups going to the first 3 place getters, as well as a consolation prize. The winners will be decided over the next 2 days at the Wyong Club. Top local bowlers taking part are Betty Bradley from Gwendolyn, June Boyd from Charlestown, and Brenda Smith from Woolworths. The event winds up on Thursday. Last night's performance marked the start of an ambitious year for the Hunter Orchestra. They'll mount 4 full seasons and a children's opera. Certainly an impressive program for an orchestra that is only in its 2nd year. Last year, the orchestra earned a good reputation and secured government funding. The performance last night featured music by Mozart from the film Amadeus, and was in line with the orchestra's policy of playing music that will attract new listeners and has wide appeal.
Professor Mark Rolquist is Foundation Professor of Human Nutrition at Deakin University in Victoria and will be one of the guest speakers at tonight's seminar at City Hall. The professor says nutrition plays a critical part in keeping down the level of heart disease. Mainly, we should have less salt, more fish, more plant-type foods and moderate amounts of alcohol in our diet, among others. He says, however, that Australian eating habits are improving, but we still rank high among the countries in heart disease.
Regrettably, I think most of the change is taking place amongst educationally and socio-economically advantaged groups. I mean, that's okay, but what is regrettable is that disadvantaged groups in Australia are seeing less favourable change. So the challenge for the National Heart Foundation and for healthcare professionals, educators, media people, is to access those most at need.
Where this week the emphasis is on preventing heart disease, by the time Dr Bruce Bastian, Director of Cardiology at the Royal Newcastle Hospital, sees people, the emphasis is on cure rather than prevention.
Heart disease forms the major cause of death of people in the Hunter region. It far surpasses other causes of death, which include cancer and accidental death. It accounts for at least 40%, maybe 50% of all deaths in the community. So we see those deaths, and we also see people who are at the end of the line with coronary artery disease, with heart attacks, who really we can do a great deal for, and probably a lot more than we could a number of years ago. And many of these people resume completely normal lives after they've had a heart attack. However, the problem is it'd be much better to prevent their coronary artery disease, their heart disease developing.
Ultra-high frequency translator has been built at Rambolara Reserve overlooking Gosford and the surrounding suburbs. Planning for the new facility has been underway since the early 70s. It's only in the last 12 months that the translating facilities have been built. Two other translators are planned for the Central Coast situated at Giralong and Gudaloo. The cost of the three facilities will be $2 million. The translators have been constructed as a joint venture involving NBN Channel 3 in Newcastle and 3 Sydney stations, 10, 9 and 7. 4 stations will be on the UHF band, with NBN on Channel 40. This is the first joint venture between major television stations of its kind in Australia. Today's official opening was attended by leading executives from all the participating stations, as well as the member for Robertson and Minister for the Arts and Environment, Barry Cohen, and the Mayor of Gosford, Bob Bell. But the task of officially opening the translator was left to Communications Minister Michael Duffy.
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to officially open the translator station.
Later, at a luncheon hosted by NBN Television, Michael Duffy told the audience the new translator was the product of the close cooperation between the TV stations involved and will be a great benefit to the Central Coast.
Gosford will be the second 6-channel UHF-only city
in this country after the Gold Coast, and is a fine example of the use of UHF to provide high quality reception where it's just not possible to provide extra facilities on the VHF band.
In Newcastle, under a full moon and a perfect dawn, hundreds of people gathered to pay their tributes at Civic Park. Commemorative service began as former diggers marched along King Street to the park. The years may have taken toll on their numbers, but not their spirit, each one carrying a living memory of a fallen comrade. Wreaths and tributes were placed on the memorial by politicians and representatives of community groups and the local RSL sub-branches. Other services and marches were also held around the region. Later in the morning, Newcastle's Anzac Day march started from Pacific Park and proceeded through the mall and along Hunter Street to Civic Park. It was led this year by David Dahl of Belmont. He and his horse Murph were dressed in the original Australian light horse uniforms.
Well, the reverse burst of stirrups, it's an old cavalry tradition, and I think it stands for those that didn't make it back.
And what about the other gear? It's all original light horse, isn't it?
Oh, it's all authentic. The sword on the back was an officer's ceremonial sword. The gentleman that did own that sword was killed in action in Belgium. The medal with the sword is one of the medals which was presented to him.
I believe he was a local fellow too.
What I've gathered, he came originally from Singleton.
The march proceeded to Civic Park with two original members of the AIF at the head. Diggers unable to march were driven to the commemorative service by taxis. Record crowds lined the streets to cheer the units from both World Wars, Korean and Vietnam Wars. Allied units, including units from France and Poland, were also represented, along with a number of women's services. Some of the original Light Horse Regiment and veterans who served in both World Wars were proud participants today.
I went to Egypt first, and then I was transferred to England and had an operation there. Then I went across to France, and I was 3 years in France.
I haven't been able to march for 4 years, but each year somebody's missing, and I think I'd be the only one of my regiment here today. First light horseman.
At Civic Park, the ex-servicemen and women, as well as a record crowd, added to the tributes paid at the dawn service. And for those people attending, Anzac Day had seemed to have lost none of its significance.
It should go on, it shouldn't be neglected, should keep on having it all the time. It's really great.
Do you know what we're celebrating today?
The men that went to war.
My husband was a prisoner for 4 years, 3.5 years, and I wouldn't like anybody belonging to me to have to go through that again.
But today was a day for the former diggers, a day to remember lost mates and pass on to the next generations the proud heritage of the Anzacs.